All right, biologists, let's take a look at this simple intro to Punnett squares. Now, I have here this question that says, in peas, tall is dominant over dwarf. So they're talking about the height of the plant, right? So the tall plant is dominant over dwarf plant. In a cross between dwarf plant and a heterozygous tall plant, what percentage of the offspring will be dwarf? So good practice. Write down the information you have because it's easier to see what you need, right? So tall is dominant over dwarf. I'm gonna write here. So the capital letter represents the dominant. So I'm gonna use a T here for tall. Tall is dominant, right? And it's dominant to dwarf. So I'm gonna use lowercase letter, same letter, right? Same letter, but uppercase is dominant, lowercase is recessive, right? What a lot of people do is they use different letters, and that is not correct. Okay, if you're taking the AB exam, that will cost you points, that will cost you mark points, right? So you cannot do tall and dwarf, that is not acceptable. In a cross between a dwarf plant and a heterozygous tall plant, so a heterozygous tall plant, that means I'm going to use a different color here. So heterozygous tall plant, this guy is going to be heterozygous, right? So one dominant, one recessive. This is what heterozygous means. And it's tall because of the dominant tall allele. And the dwarf plant has to be homozygous recessive, right? The tall plant has to be homozygous recessive because it's dwarf. So, and dwarf is recessive, right? So this is the cross, one plant and the other plant. So they're asking the percentage of the offspring that will be dwarf. To do that, we come to our good old Punnett grid. So here I will have this grid. On one of the sides, you put one of the gametes here for one of the plants, one of the parents. So here I'm gonna use this space to put the gametes for this guy. This guy can give either the tall allele, right? So here, either the tall allele or the dwarf allele, right? So this is how it works. To make a new individual, to make a baby, the gamete will carry one chromosome from mom, one chromosome from dad. So the chromosome here may be carrying the tall allele or the dwarf allele. One thing that a lot of people do wrong, they write big T, small t, big T, small t. This is not how it works because you can only pass on one allele to the next generation per parent. So one of the parents go up here, big T, small t. The other parent goes here on the side. So let's use, what color was it? Green, right? So let's use this side here for this guy. So we had one here and the other on the other side. And this guy can only give the small t, because that's the only thing they have. This plant only has the small allele. So what we do, we take one allele of each parent. So I can combine either the big T here with the small t from this plant here, right? So I can have this, or I could have this small t with this small t, and then I'll have this combination. And you do the same here. The big T with the small t, the big T with the small t, or the other two small recessive alleles. So the question was, what percentage of the offspring will be dwarf? Now, to be dwarf, you need to be homozygous recessive, and in our case, that is 2 out of 4, which is the same as, since they're asking for a percentage, this is 50%. So make sure that you're answering the question, right? question was what percentage? So this is what you were looking for.